One of the most loathed journalists in corporate press, Taylor Lorenz, has been demoted after publishing fake news about a couple of YouTubers trying to, as it seems, cover it up and then blaming her editor. Now, some outlets, I think most of them, aren't calling it a demotion, but it literally is a demotion. Now, I don't really care to do interpersonal drama stuff, and I'm not super interested in what's the big news about this one person. The story here is actually a bit more about Bill Maher and millennials in general. Taylor Lorenz personifies millennial entitlement. And on Friday, Bill Maher roasted the Washington Post, Felicia Sonmez, and I believe he also, no, actually, he may not have talked about Taylor Lorenz in that one, but he did bring up millennial entitlement in the newsroom and how that very often there will be some entry-level millennial who's been working for 6 months wondering why they're not a producer yet. Now, I often criticize Bill Maher because he doesn't read the news. He hears it secondhand, and often his commentary is based on factually incorrect statements. But in this one, he's correct. Let's rag on millennials. I love ragging on millennials. You know why? Well, I'm a millennial. Most of you are millennials. And I think most of us agree on what's wrong with this generation. It certainly isn't us, those of us who are millennials and believe in doing hard work, sacrificing, and having a little humility. The problem is the overwhelming amount of millennials who are entitled, whiny, demanding. Sums up. I don't know who raised these people. It's it's what we long feared. The participation trophy generation has become adults. I remember this when I was growing up. Participation trophies. You didn't win, but you were here, so here's your trophy. No. You get nothing. You fail, you get nothing. Well, here's the story. Taylor Lorenz, you may have heard, wrote a story where she claimed that if you were, I love this, Legal Bites, a YouTuber, was commenting on the Johnny Depp Amber Heard story, as was that umbrella guy. I believe that's the username. And this is pop culture. This is literally what people do. They comment on pop culture. Taylor Lorenz called them radicalized. Here's the funny thing. The Johnny Depp story is about Amber Heard publishing a defamatory Washington Post article. For Taylor Lorenz to write this story was a conflict of interest. To then get the story wrong and refuse to admit it and blame somebody else. Washington Post is gutter trash. And they finally realized it and demoted this woman. So she was on the features team as a columnist, basically getting to write her thoughts and opinions. And now she's on the technology team, meaning you're being demoted to a grunt reporter. Oh, it feels good. Now, I think Washington Post is trash, but it's good to see some accountability for this garbage. And I'll say it again. Perhaps you work at the Washington Post and you're a veteran reporter. Perhaps you were an intern back in the 70s with Woodward and Bernstein and you were very excited, and now you're in your 50s and you're just like, what has become of this paper? Maybe you're a young person, a millennial or maybe zennial. Maybe you're in your early 40s, not necessarily a young person. And maybe you saw the legends, as it were, of Woodward and Bernstein in these stories, and you thought to yourself you wanted to be a great journalist, and now here you are at the Washington Post. It's so sad, isn't it? Well, Timcast is hiring. Let's read the story. Fox News reports there continues to be more fallout at the Washington Post over Taylor Lorenz's erroneous report that sparked uproar on social media. The New York Times reported on Friday that Lorenz, the Post's internet culture columnist, is being moved from the features staff to the technology team, according to sources from the paper. Sources also allege that Cameron Barr, Washington Post senior managing editor, was asked to review her articles before publication. I love it. She continues to just lie like a psychopath. Fox News asked the Washington Post if Lorenz's shift means she is now a reporter versus a columnist, and whether that means she must curb her social media activity. Fox News also inquired if any other writers for the Post besides Lorenz must submit their work to Barr prior to publication. The Post declined to comment. So let's clarify. They didn't definitively say she is no longer a columnist and that she is now just a reporter. In my humble opinion, when you're moved from the features team to the technology team, heavy demotion. So I can't speak for what the Washington Post does. I can tell you that the features editor for magazines typically chooses what goes on the feature in the front page when they have all of the words. features typically are featured front and center, the technology section is usually buried in the back. As a technology writer, she probably she's being taken away from front and center in the limelight and being pushed to a small pocket in the back. Lorenz told Fox News, "For what it's worth, Cameron has always read my stories ever since I got here. He reads all big stories that go on the site. He's an awesome editor. I love his feedback and working with him." You see what she didn't say. For what it's worth, he always reads my stories. Yes, but does he edit and approve your stories? She echoed what she previously stated publicly regarding the error in the report, which she insists stemmed from miscommunication, that there are bad faith campaigns aimed to discredit her and the Post. Okay, you get it. She is insufferable. Let's show you more. Washington Post Taylor Lorenz scolds Vox founder Matt Iglesias for joking about his COVID-19 diagnosis. Here we go. Washington Post tech reporter. Oh, tech reporter. They're officially saying it now. Taylor Lorenz faced mockery after she appeared to slam a fellow commentator for making light of his COVID-19 diagnosis. This is so insane. Matthew Iglesias, he's not all that bad. You know, he's one of the co-founders at Vox. I think I'm not a fan of his political ideology. He once had this famous tweet where he was like, he said something like, the fact that Democrats convinced people they didn't get a tax cut was great progressive messaging. And I'm like, that's evil, dude. He says, FYI, all future typos are due to long COVID. And Taylor responds, "I'm glad it's a joke for you, Matt, and that you're lucky enough to get access to great care. But for those who have had their lives destroyed by the virus and who have had loved ones die from or suffer from long COVID, it's not funny. Hope you can have a little more empathy, especially today." What? Millennials. Not all of them. Not all. Hashtag not all millennials. But man, too many of them. Matt, joke's fine. I get it. It was worth a chuckle. That's great. Have a nice day. I see that tweet. I'm like, nah. You know, it's like, it's whatever. It's a joke. Taylor had no reason to respond to this at all. Here's another photo of her crying, I guess. The humorlessness is a symptom of old age, not long COVID. Oh, man. And they go to mention her controversy. Well, let's do this. I don't really care all that much about Taylor Lorenz. You know, I had defended her in the past when I thought she was doing well, and I stand by what I said about her doing well, but man, she really lost the plot. I give you this story from Deadline. Bill Maher's real-time blasts Washington Post Twitter wars. Democracy dies in dumbness. I really wish Bill would read the news instead of just getting it secondhand and then commenting on what he heard secondhand. There was a really great segment, Crystal Ball. She is a progressive, and it was funny. Kyle Kalinske tweeted, okay. Crystal Ball, she brings up information about the Federal Reserve. Bill Maher disagrees. She shuts him down. I tweeted, bravo to Crystal Ball. Kyle Kalinske is unlike, Crystal has united the political factions. Well, to be fair, Kyle and Crystal, I often shout you guys out because I think Kyle and Crystal are engage in good faith efforts. They want to know the facts. They want to engage properly. Very few people, I think, on the left do that. But I don't think they're right about all of their political opinions, but I think they are good people. Crystal pointed out that, they were talking about inflation. And one guy mentions inflationary spending resulting in inflation. And Crystal's like, the market crashes and the Fed dumps trillions of dollars into the market. Nobody's complaining about that. And Bill Maher's like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? And I'm just like, oh, it's so mind numbing sometimes that Bill doesn't read the news. So yes, I want to rag on millennials, but Bill, you're a boomer. Come on. No generation's perfect. The boomers raised the millennials, and Gen X is in there somewhere. But anyway, yes, the Federal Reserve was buying up assets and I think stocks. They were bailing out the stock market to keep it going amid the COVID crisis. That was bad. Yeah, we're not fans of the Federal Reserve. It's a big manipulation game. It's propping the system up. It's anti-meritocratic. Anyway, props to Crystal Ball. But Bill Maher has beef with millennials, says Deadline, specifically those who inhabit the newsroom of the Washington Post. And this I agree with him on. Reviewing the recent Twitter war between WAPO reporter Felicia Sonmez and the other members of that newsroom, a flame battle that eventually saw Sonmez fired, and another reporter put on a month's leave without pay, Maher said the joke tweet that instigated it was something that has been going on for eons, yet the unlicensed daycare center, that is the newsroom, didn't find the humor in it. Bravo. I'm going to have to agree with Bill Maher when he roasts millennials. Can you imagine a world that allows jokes you don't like? Of course. The leadership folded like a Miami condo, and then the whole room goes, ah. He said, falling back on the tired trope that the tweet did not reflect the institution's values, free speech not being one of them. Maher then broadened the WAPO conflict to a larger breakdown of the generation that is now coming into its own in the workplace as baby boomers retire. What did I say? I've been telling y'all this. This country is going to ignite when baby boomers retire and then die. I don't mean to be crass, but, people die. Quote, you think my generation is an eye roll? Let me tell you about the younger generation. Your sense of entitlement is legendary. He said, also attacking your attention span and work ethic, specifically the unqualified little ish who doesn't understand why he's not a producer yet. He added that the WAPO story had such resonance because we all know the stereotypical players in it. Oh, man, do I know that. The people who are like, I just got hired, but I think I deserve, tons of money and prestige. And it's like, dude, you didn't do anything. Yo, I get started in this industry by just going out and doing stuff. I didn't go to a company and say, I deserve all of these things. I went out and did stuff. And then when companies came to me and said, we'll offer you a job, I was like, nah, I don't want it. I don't want to go to a company and say, give me X or else. I'll put it this way. I don't want to get hired, then come out and say, I deserve this and stomp my feet. But I'll tell you what I've done is that I've made that clear before getting hired. And I do that every time. I tell everyone who tries to do a deal with me, it is going to cost you twice as much as you think. If you're not prepared, we should not be working together. Because I'm not going to be one of these people in someone else's company demanding they give me their stuff, which is why I do my own company. When I worked for Vice Infusion, I said, here's what I expect. When they said yes and then didn't do it, I said, have a nice day. Your company, you do as you please. I am free to leave, and I did. Anyway. Quote, millennials complain that they haven't taken over yet, Maher said, but that's because the boomers are reluctant to turn the world over to them for incidents like the WAPO wars. The crybabies are still winning. They complain they haven't taken over yet. The fact that the Post's response was to punish one of their best reporters shows the kindergarten is still in charge. In 1972, the Watergate break-in happened, a story basically scooped by the WAPO, by the Washington Post. I have to wonder how the Post's newsroom of today would handle that. All this time blubber tweeting. Don't you have anything better to do? Aren't you supposed to be reporters digging up stuff? This is why you're not in charge. If someone named Deep Throat called today and wanted to meet, this crew of emotional hemophiliacs would have an anxiety attack and report to HR they didn't feel safe. Yeah, bravo. Slow clap, Bill Maher. Remember when that Netflix executive said, here's a list of things we don't allow on Netflix. And they went, oh, he actually said the words. Then he got called into HR. It's a true story, by the way. He gets called into HR and they're like, we have a report that you said slurs. And he was like, I was explaining to them the words that are not allowed on Netflix. And they're like, and what words were that? And then he says them and they went, oh, he said them again. It's like, you asked him to say it. And then the guy got fired. Yeah. Those weren't all millennials. Those are Gen Xers too, by the way. Maher did take hope in the fact that the Washington Post eventually did fire Sonmez. Maybe there's a line. That generation has to find that line and move it closer to sanity because democracy dies in dumbness. Now, I want to point out, as much as I love the ragging on woke millennials, Bill Maher, we're talking about you, the boomers, being in charge of these companies, letting the millennials do these things. It took how long to demote Taylor Lorenz and fire Felicia Sonmez? Grow a pair. Bill, if perhaps you read the news and actually paid attention to what was going on and didn't just get it 2 weeks later secondhand, we might actually not be in this mess. So it is all derivative. You complain about millennials. Yes, I agree with you. Many of them are just awful people. But it is because of boomers. Now, here's the reality. It is because of boomers that I am who I am. All right, I can respect that. In fact, I actually like the boomer generation way more than the millennial generation. The problem is the boomers weren't able to share their values widely enough with their children. I know Gen X is in there somewhere. Gen X is always like, you're forgetting about us. But I think the peak of majority of millennials are born of boomer parents. And then there's like younger Gen Xers who have millennial kids, but like younger Gen X. So if you're like in your late 40s, you might have a kid who's, in their mid 20s, which is just barely millennial. So like the millennials that are in their 30s, boomers, you gave us the next generation. But it's not just boomers. Star Trek, the next generation I'm talking about, not the people. Star Trek was an amazing show. And there were a lot of really great things that came about. But we also got a bunch of really bad stuff too. I mean, early Simpsons was really good, right? Seth MacFarlane is Gen Xer. He gave us Family Guy and a bunch of other shows that I think are also good. I think ultimately, when you have a generation working with another generation, you'll get something unique and something good. It's not just the boomers. It was the silent generation, the boomers, and Gen X. And there was this period where they're working together. Now you have millennials who are like this woke insanity is emerging. And now you have Gen Xers and boomers being like, I don't want to be involved in that. That was always the problem. The fact that boomers don't stand up against this, the fact that it took Washington Post this long is proof of what caused this problem. When the millennial crybabies were screaming, I want more ice cream when they were little kids, those boomers were like, okay, honey, stop yelling. I'll give you whatever you want. And those kids grow up to be Taylor Lorenz, pouting and screaming and crying and go to their Swiss boarding schools. And now, because of their wealth and access, they work at the Washington Post. And those same boomers that wouldn't reprimand these children are doing the exact same thing. So I wonder, for all of you watching, did your parents punish you? Did you have strict parents? Not so strict, but were they firm with you? You broke the rules, you pay the price, you're grounded or something like that. We're taking away the PlayStation or something like that. How many of these people, how much you want to bet? I'm willing to bet. Many of the woke millennials had the parents who were like, my daughter can do no wrong. She's a precious snowflake. And how much you want to bet most people more like us, more libertarian, had parents who are like, if you can't figure it out, that's your problem. I can show you how to do it, and then you got to solve the problem. That's how I grew up. I grew up with, if you don't work hard and try hard, you will not succeed, and I won't do it for you. That was reality. Maybe it was a combination of not being well off, so I had no choice, and having parents who are like, that's what you need to learn. I wonder how many of the woke millennials come from uppity, waspy, or middle-class families, and it seems like many of them. When you look at all the polling, woke people, these woke millennials tend to come from middle and upper middle-class families. So these are the snooty, participation trophy, can do no wrong, face no hardship generation. And you can see it, man. People who grow up in hardship, they survived because they figured out how to solve the problems. People who grow up in comfort often don't. But it's not absolute. I know many people who are born to wealthy families who are hardworking and successful because they had good parents. A parent who works hard and succeeds and then understands how to transfer those values to their kid, well, they do it. It's typically not true, though. They say wealth lasts 3 generations. The first generation is working really, really hard, solves the problem, makes a ton of money. They raise their kid and say, here's why you got to work hard if you want to make money. But that kid hears it, but never actually experiences it. So by now, the grandkid, they just have the inheritance and they say, yeah, it's what my grandpa used to say, or it's what my dad used to say. And that kid is just born wealthy, doesn't see their parent do any hard work. It's just, I don't know. You end up with people like Hunter Biden, where he's wealthy, he gets well-off jobs, but I'm not sure his kids are gonna make it because he's a crackhead. He's literally a crackhead. And so while Joe Biden, not a good person, and I think he was probably abusing his kids, is able to transfer some of what made him wealthy, political corruption. I don't know how that will transfer down to the next generation. That is just a bunch of, the one of them, a crackhead. That's what it is. Here we go. The most interesting moment of the talk was when Maher was asked whether he thought Florida Governor Ron DeSantis would be better than Trump. Yes, I do, he said. He won't be poop tweeting and having feuds with Bette Midler. Fair point. The panel discussion was dominated by podcaster Crystal Ball, a far leftist who would hardly let Maher or guest author James Kirchek talk. I don't know, far leftist? I don't think Crystal Ball is a far leftist. I think she's just a left liberal. I think Crystal's great, actually. I don't agree with everything she says. I think she is on the other side of politics, but she's the example of the kind of person who does the research, makes the points, and has political opinions we disagree with. I'm a big fan. Kyle Kulinski as well. Kyle Kulinski's criticized me, but he's always done it in a meaningful way that I thought was funny, appropriate, Big fan. Crystal and Kyle would love to have you on Timcast IRL whenever you feel like it. I know you host your own show, so it is what it is. But Sagar and Crystal, they do a great show with Breaking Point, so I'm a big fan. This gives me hope. Bill Maher should retire, and he should pass on his show to someone like Crystal Ball. I like that Bill Maher calls out the woke, but he's so late to the party. Now, I suppose there is an issue with, as much as I'm critical of Bill Maher not reading the news, politically, he's more moderate liberal, and I like that better than Crystal Ball's politics. But I like that Crystal Ball reads the news. You don't have to agree on the same opinions, and I'm sure she gets things wrong, and I do too. But anyway, here's the point. Taylor Lorenz is an example of someone who should not be in the political space. She is just a whiny, angry, awful person. And that's really what it comes down to. Bill Maher is right about many millennials, entitled and whiny. But Bill, the Washington Post is run by boomers. They don't want to hand it over to millennials, but they also don't want, that's the problem. If they did, they would say, get it straight, get in order, do your job, clean your room. Otherwise, we're done for. But you know what? Fine. Democracy dies in darkness, and democracy dies without meritocracy. Now, I don't believe in absolute democracy, but the point is, if you want to build a system based on equity, where you just put people in these positions, don't be surprised when that collapses. And then companies like Timcast, based on a meritocratic approach, succeed. Yeah, this company exists because I built it from the ground up with no investors, but support from people like you. Now, I'm not going to sit here and talk about how everything is every individual. I'm not a firm proponent of this. You, the individual, make everything happen. I am very individualist, but I'm rather centrist libertarian. That is to say, I know what I do is only possible because of all of you. You're not just customers of Timcast, you're believers in the message and the movement and the job we do. It's a combination of not just providing good service, but working towards something we all believe in. That is something special. We are building this from the ground up. Many of these other millennials getting jobs at Washington Post are being handed the keys to a car someone else made, and they don't know how to drive it. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.